Maybe over Patton now, I guess. All right, it's good to be here this morning. Good to see you guys here. Listening to all these prayer requests this morning, I heard a lot of prayer requests that were mentioned that were some times of praise and some happy times, and some times of worry and some times of sadness, and it's kind of cool to hear all that. To be in the house of God and hear everybody's hearts. And that's one thing we do as a family and come together is talk like that. Now, I did notice too, though, that one of the prayer requests was Kayla had said something about, she said, well, I guess it's a praise item. I'm getting married this week. Did you notice that? Daddy, did you notice that?
I did not.
I noticed that. So, no, but it is a praise item. And, I know that these two are happy, and I know that their families are happy, and so looking forward to that coming up this week. I know that they are really looking forward to that as well. So, if you have your Bibles this morning, open it up again to the book of Ruth. We're going to be here one more time this week. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father God, thank you so much for this morning. Thank you so much for your love and kindness that we don't deserve. I ask that you watch over the things that are done here this morning. Please use me, God. Use me to speak to your people. And God, thank you so much for the opportunity that you've given me to stand before your people and talk about your word. Because I know that I'm not worthy to do this, God. But God, I know that with you all things are possible. And Lord, I ask that you watch over these people, give them open minds, open hearts, and open ears to hear the things that you want them to hear, hearts to receive the things that you want them to receive. God, thank you so much for all these praise items that were mentioned this morning during the prayer request. But God, I also ask that you give comfort to those who are needing you, God, this morning as they worry about things and as they deal with anxieties and struggles that life brings us. Lord, we know that you're our only source of hope in all of this. And God, I pray that we will turn to your word this morning and we will find that hope that you promise us. Now, God, thank you so much for this church. Thank you so much for the people of this church. I ask that you continue to work through this church and continue to use this church to further your kingdom, Lord. Help us to be a light within this community and within the world, Lord. And God, just be with this morning's service. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right. We've been talking about the book of Ruth, and let me kind of give a recap on all of this. You guys know the story of Ruth. We've been going over it now for 2 weeks or so. And so the story goes something like this. Naomi and her husband, Elimelech, they go because they are looking for food. They've run out. Their country is experiencing a famine. And so they go to a faraway place, to a place where people don't like them and they don't want to be around them. And they go to the people of Moab. And they go there to find food. And as they go there to find food, Naomi's husband, Elimelech, he dies. And we all of a sudden are thrown into this story where it seems like this woman is just, man, it's just an awful thing. And she's been thrown into this horrible situation. And so we think, wow, how could she do that? But then we read on in the story and we see that it gets even worse. Because some years later, after her 2 sons that went with them and married, they wind up dying. And both of them died. And so Naomi's now in this foreign country in a land by herself. And the only thing that she has left is her 2 daughter-in-laws. And then she decides, you know what, I got to pack it up and go back to my hometown. And so she starts to pack it up to go to her hometown. And her 2 daughter-in-laws, she tells them, look, stay here. Don't come with me. I'm a bitter little lady now. Everything that's happened to me is awful. And so one daughter-in-law named Orpah, she says, all right, I'm gone. And she goes and she stays. But the other daughter-in-law named Ruth says, I got to stay with you. I've got to stay with you because you've been so faithful and because I see something in you that I want. And I want your God to become my God. And so she stays with Naomi and she goes back to this land with Naomi. And they get back to the land and things are going along and Naomi and Ruth are out there by themselves. And so they figure, well, I've got to do something to make a living. I've got to do something to survive. And so Ruth goes out every morning in the fields and gleans the fields, gets the leftovers from what's left from the farmers. And then she's going and she's doing this day after day after day. And it turns into what it feels like is just this ordinary, just mundane life. But she does it faithfully. And she does so day after day. And Naomi is constantly looking out. And the two are looking out for each other. And then one day she finds out that Ruth has been gleaning in the field of this man named Boaz. And it turns out that Boaz is a relative of Naomi. And so Naomi is all of a sudden now starting to see the hand of God continuing to work in her life. Despite the fact that she's been dealt a raw deal, where she's lost her husband and her 2 kids, she continues to look for the hand of God, and she's now seeing it. And Ruth is coming out, and she is with Boaz, and she goes, and Naomi says to Ruth, basically, hey, look, go and propose to Boaz. And so she does so, and Boaz says, oh man, she's asking me to marry her. And so Boaz though goes, look, I am a close relative of Naomi, but I'm not the closest. There is one more that's closer than me. And so he goes and he finds this relative the next day to make sure that he can do this. And so he goes to this relative and he says, hey, look, Naomi, she's back, and you're the closest relative because we have this law called the kinsman redeemer, and you know about it. You need to marry her and take care of her and take over the field, And so the guy says, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And so Boaz is like, oh, wait a minute. Then Boaz says, oh, by the way, she's got this really ugly daughter-in-law, and her name's Ruth, and you'll have to take her too. He didn't say that like that, but, He said, oh, well, he's got Ruth, and you'll have to take her too. And so this guy goes, well, that's just too much, and that'll cause too much strife, and it'll cause some things. And so I tell you what, Boaz, I forfeit my kinsman redeemer, and now you're the next in line. You can do it. And Boaz is in the background going, yes. And so we're at that point of the story, and we see that that's what happens. And Boaz and Ruth wind up together. And so we see all of this, and we see the main thing of the story, I think, is the fact that Ruth decided to stay with her mother-in-law, Naomi. That had to be a hard decision. Anytime you decide to stay with an in-law, that's a hard decision, isn't it? But this is what they did. And so they did this, and Ruth did this. And in Ruth chapter 1, verses 19 through 21, if you'll go there, we can reread that. It says, now the 2 of them went until they came to Bethlehem. And it happened when they had come to Bethlehem that all of the city was excited because of them. And the women said, is this Naomi? But she said to them, do not call me Naomi, call me Mara. For the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, and the Lord has brought me home again empty. Why do you call me Naomi? Since the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has afflicted me. And so here's what happened. Ruth and Naomi are coming back to their hometown, and their hometown looks out and they say, hey, that's Naomi. She's coming back. All right. And Naomi comes in and says, oh, look, I'm not Naomi anymore. I'm bitter. God's dealt a wrong deal to me. And so I don't want you to call me Naomi anymore. I want you to call me Mara, because Mara means I'm bitter. And so the town sees Naomi is not the same person she was when she left. She is somebody completely different when she comes back, I can kind of relate to this because when Carrie and I and the kids, we go back home to Tennessee, it's different now. We've been gone for 4 years now, coming up in June. It'll be 4 years we've been gone from Tennessee. And it's amazing to me every time we go back how a little bit becomes more unfamiliar. They start to put up different things. It's just a different area. And I think what's amazing maybe to them whenever they see me is I'm not really the same Eric that left. I've changed a little bit. And I think that you guys find that out. If you move away from home and you go home, things are a little bit different. And that's what was happening with Naomi here. She was not the same person that left her hometown. And she comes back, but here's the difference with Naomi. She says, I'm now bitter. You once knew me as probably a joyful little lady, But now I'm kind of bitter because these bad things have happened to me. And so my joy has been kind of taken from me. And so she's letting her hometown know that I'm not the same person that left here a few years ago. She's letting the hometown know that, look, there's no more joy left in me. You see, I think here's what's happening. Some of us are getting kind of like that. You see, life keeps on hitting us and knocking us down and happening. And it just, like I said, it keeps happening. And we get bitter. And we become bitter to the extent that there's no more joy that's found in us. In fact, there's many of us walking around all day, every day, with our heads down, And all we do is constantly look for the negative in life. Everything we do is look for the negative in life. And I got a feeling that this is where Naomi was starting to become like, you know. Everything bad was happening to her, and she started probably focusing in on a lot more of the negative stuff. And this is what's happened to a lot of us today, is that, man, life is just rough, and we keep focusing on everything negative, and we forget about the positive things that happen. In fact, we don't even notice the positive things in our life anymore. All we do is focus on negative. You see, past events in our lives have made us bitter people, hasn't it? We bring up so much stuff, you know, that happened in the past and how it made us bitter and how it robbed us of our joy. And we become so bitter that we no longer look for the good in anything anymore. I found out that that's one of the things that watching the news every day does to us, you know, is it makes us become bitter that we no longer look for the good in anything anymore, because there's no reporting of good anymore. It's all about the bad stuff. But listen, let me remind you, ladies and gentlemen, we still live in a very affluent country. We're reminded of that, especially this weekend. Being Memorial Day weekend, so many men and women died so that you and I can come to church this morning, you know. And here's the deal. We all experience these good things, but we're too busy going around and looking for all the bad, all of the negative stuff in the world. And we focus in on that constantly, day after day. You see, Naomi could have finished out the story like that. She could have went her entire life, and she could have had Ruth just kind of tag along behind her, and she just kind of mope around like this her whole life, you know. She had every right to do that. Her husband died, her 2 sons died. She had every right to be bitter, to be sad, to be depressed, to be just... But we don't see that in the end of this story. In fact, what we see in the end of the story is something totally different. We see a very happy little lady. She goes from being bitter to being very, very happy. This little lady who was dealt such a raw hand in life goes from bitterness to happiness, to making a difference. She goes from being bitter to fulfilling her purpose that God has given her in life. And you see, this is the problem. As some of us have become so bitter in life that we have completely forgotten that God has given each and every one of you a purpose to live this life. And we're no longer walking around trying to fulfill the purpose anymore. We're just walking around looking for negative things now. Looking for the bitterness in the world. But that's not what Naomi does. At the end, we see a happy little grandma, you know, despite being dealt the raw deal. Why do we see this? There's a few points that I want to look at this morning. One of the reasons why we see this is obviously, I mentioned last week, is that Naomi is constantly looking for the hand of God. Let me ask you this. Have you become so bitter that you quit looking for the hand of God? You know? Because some people get to that point. We get so bitter in life that we don't even look for God's hand in anything anymore. In fact, we get so bitter in life that we look for God's hand in something. We say, well, what's God going to do to me now? Naomi didn't get stuck in that rut like this. She started to look for the hand of God in everything. I think we see some valuable little lessons that this lady taught us. The first one here, I think, is when we become bitter, one thing that happens is this. So we tend to separate ourselves out from people. We tend to want to get by ourselves, you know. And what we want to do is go sulk in a corner somewhere. You know, Daxton's like that. When I get on to Daxton sometimes, one thing he'll do is, you know, he'll stomp and throw a fit, and then he'll want to go and sit in a corner and cry by himself, and he doesn't want anybody around him to fight it. And honestly, I see a lot of that in us adults sometimes too. We may not go to the extreme like Daxton does, to go crying and stuff, and some adults might. But we may not do that. But we do like to kind of separate ourselves out from everybody, because here's the deal. We've been hurt in the past. You know? And so we don't want to get close to anybody. We don't want to get close to anybody. But Naomi, she taught us something valuable, I think. Is that one of the things that she taught us is that we have to do, is that we have to start sticking together. Church, we have to start sticking together. See, some of us have become so bitter that we don't want to stick together anymore. Some of us have become so bitter that we want to be separated. Some of us have become so bitter that we want to be alienated from the entire church, not to mention the entire world. But Naomi teaches us that sticking together is where it's at. Ruth chapter 2, verses 1 through 5, she says, "There was a relative of Naomi's husband, a man of great wealth of the family of Elimelech. His name was Boaz. So Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, 'Please let me go to the field and glean heads of grain after him, in whose sight I might find favor.' And she said to her, 'Go, my daughter.' And then she left and went gleaning in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come across the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the family of Elimelech. And now behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said to the reapers, 'The Lord be with you.' And they answered him, 'The Lord bless you.' Then Boaz said to his servants, who was in charge of the reapers, 'Whose young woman is this?'" You see, the answer that they give was, "Hey, this is Naomi's. This is Naomi's number one person right now." You see, that's what happened. Is this is the lady that come back with Naomi that you are hearing about. That's what they're telling you. This is the woman who stuck by Naomi's side through thick and thin. These two are together. See, that's what Naomi has taught us, is that it's good to stick together. It's not good to push people away when we're hurting. You see, that's so easy to do, isn't it? It's so easy to get to a point in our life where we are hurting so bad that we start pushing people away, that we don't want anybody around us. Naomi could have very easily been caught up in that. She could have just left in the middle of the night and not even talked to her in-laws. She could have just left and said, "Hey, I'm gone. I don't need to talk to Ruth. I don't need to talk to Orpah. They can do what they want to do on their own." But Ruth went and she told them, because she didn't want to just push them away. See, because of that, here's what happened. Ruth became family to Naomi. She became family to Naomi. Yes, she became a daughter-in-law, so she was family in that sense, but she became an even closer part of the family. Because do you notice what Ruth says in this story? When Naomi is telling him to tell Ruth, "Hey, you don't have to come with me, I'm leaving." Ruth says this, and it's probably the key part of this whole story. Ruth tells Naomi, "I'm not going to leave you, because here's the deal. Your God has become my God." You see, and Ruth became family with Naomi in that sense. And so here's the thing. We're family. The church together is a family. We are a family in that sense. And so when we are hurting, when one of us hurts, all of us should hurt. When one of us is rejoicing, all of us should be rejoicing. We should be sticking together, not pushing each other apart. God's called you and me to stick together through this, not push each other away. But in essence, what it needs to be is that our trials and tribulations need to draw us closer to each other. You see, what happens is this. Is more importantly, Ruth and Naomi, they became family, they became sisters in Christ. And they stuck together through thick and thin. And here's what family does. It leans on each other. When the going gets tough, it leans on each other. It depends on each other. We had some prayer requests this morning. We had some prayer requests this morning where the heart was just kind of poured out with everybody in this room. And we do that because we want God to hear our prayer requests. But there's another reason why we need to do this, I think. It's so that each one of us can hear each other's prayer requests, and we can know what's going on in each other's life. And it's not that we just hear the prayer request and we throw up a prayer during the week to pray for some of these prayer requests, but we also are called to check in on each other, right? Through thick and thin. Don't let your bitterness push you away from people. You see, here's the deal. We all deal with this adversity in life. Every one of us deal with adversity in life. It's a reminder here that we are to stick together. Ruth and Naomi's example is a reminder of how important church family really is. It's because church family and family can be the only way that we get through grieving sometimes. It can be the only way to get through the challenges and the grief that life brings us, is to have people that you can lean on, to have people that you can count on. This is what God has called the church to be, people. He's not called the church to just be a group of people who randomly meet together every Sunday morning and pray to God and listen to some guy up here preaching to you and go home and do it all again. Go home to your isolated, secluded lives and wait and come back the next Sunday together and then do the same thing over and over. You see, God has called church people to live life together. If we go back to the book of Acts, one thing we will see in that is the fact that, yes, they came and they met together like we do, but another thing they did was they took care of each other. They checked in on each other. So my challenge to you and to me is that we start doing that. Is that we stick together. Is that we don't let the bitterness that has happened to us in the past push us apart. But from here on out, we come together and we stick together as a family and we lean on each other. You see, we all deal with adversity. I was reminded this week of a story that I heard about a little old lady who was by herself, and she was at the grocery store and she was in the checkout line and she had a buggy just full of stuff. And then there was a man who ran into the grocery store, and like a typical man, he only had to grab like 2 things, you know. But he's standing there behind the little old lady in the checkout line, and she's got all this stuff, and she's putting it up on the cash register, and it's going through, and she starts looking at the guy behind her, and then she starts just weeping. She starts just crying and bawling her eyes out. The guy's standing there with his couple of products in his hand, and he goes, "Ma'am, is there something I can do? Is there something I can help you with?" And she goes, "Sir, excuse me, but you look just like my son who just passed away." The guy was kind of taken aback, and he said, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry to hear that." He said, "Is there anything that I can do?" And she goes, "No." She said, "I'm just crying because you look like it." So she goes on and she starts to put more stuff up on the counter. She looks back at the guy one more time and she says, "You know what, there is one thing, if I could ask you to just do one thing for me." The guy said, "Yeah, sure, whatever." She goes, "My son died and he didn't get to tell me goodbye. And so if you would just tell me goodbye as I'm leaving, it would mean so much to me." So the guy said, "Man, yeah, I'll do that, no problem." And she goes, "Can you just say goodbye, Mom?" And he goes, "Yeah." So she gets her stuff, and the checkout guy, he gets it all rung up, and they get it all bagged up, put in her buggy, and she starts to push it away, and the guy sets his stuff up on the counter, and he looks at the lady, and he goes, "Goodbye, Mom, I'll see you later." She looks back with a tear in her eye and goes, "Goodbye, son." And she walks out. The cashier starts to check out the other guy's stuff, and she says, "That'll be $340. The guy said, "What?" He goes, "I only got 2 items. He goes, "Yeah, but your mom said that you was going to pay for it." See, y'all thought I was going to go with a sad, sob story there, didn't you? But look, here's the thing. We all deal with adversity in families in our life, right? Some of it's brought on by others, and some of it's not. But here's the deal. Ruth and Naomi, they stuck together through thick and thin. And as a church, we should stick together through thick and thin. The second thing I think that this story teaches us is this, is that not only are we called to stick together, but we're called to stand with God. Stand with God. You see, don't you think that Naomi had a hard time doing this? I kind of do. I think Naomi may have had a little bit of a difficult time doing this, in the fact of she had been just handed a raw deal after raw deal, that whenever you get like this sometimes, the last person sometimes we want to go to is God. That sounds weird, but if you've ever been knocked down so much, sometimes the last person you want to talk to is God. Because you start to feel like, well, why talk to him? He's not even listening to me. In fact, every time I talk to him, it seems like something bad happens to me. But that's not what Naomi did. Naomi continued to stand with God, no matter what. And I think this is a lesson that she teaches us today, is that Naomi stands with God, and here's what happens with God. Because she stands with God, and despite of all her circumstances, God begins to unfold his plan in her life. See, none of this caught God off guard. He knew it was all going to happen. And he begins to unfold his story in her life. Because if you'll notice that in verse 13 there, it says Ruth, in chapter 4, it says Ruth had a son. And let me tell you about this son, okay? This son that they had, it wound up being a pretty important son because it started the line that King David would come from. And King David, we know the line after that is Jesus Christ came from. And so, yeah, it was pretty important that she had this son. You see, this is Ruth's purpose in her life. This was Naomi's purpose in her life. What would have happened if Naomi would have just left Ruth in the Moabite country to their lowercase g gods? You see, Naomi, in essence, Naomi started to usher in salvation to the world because of the line of David, right? And so this is Ruth's purpose. And because Naomi kept getting up and seeking God, the purpose in both of these women's lives were fulfilled. See, you get knocked down so many times. Do not stop seeking the purpose of God in your life. He's got a plan. You see, as a church family, we've each got the responsibility to keep each other on the mission, to keep each other on the purpose of our life. If you're looking around in church and you see somebody straying away from their purpose in life because they've been knocked down, go to them and remind them that God still loves them and that you still love them. You see, as a church family, we've got this responsibility to keep each other on a mission and purpose to follow Christ and draw people closer to Him. I don't think that I can quite get it out to us that we may be a small church, we may be a small country church. But man, every story I read in the Bible, I see God using the unqualified. I see God using the small to do the big stuff. And so whenever I say things like, you know what, Hazeldale can go out there and make a difference for the community. Whenever I say things like, you know what, Hazeldale can go out there and make a difference for the world, I mean that. That's not just me talking. I mean that because here's the deal. God uses the small to do great big things. Do you ever think that Naomi in her life thought, you know what, God's going to use me to be the kind of the start off of this whole Jesus going to get to the world? That's a big deal. That's a huge deal. If Naomi hadn't been obedient to God, where would we be today? Yeah, sure, God could have provided whatever way He wanted. I know all that. I don't want to get into the logistics of all that. But I don't have to get into the logistics of all that. You know why? Because Naomi was faithful. Little old Naomi. The little woman who was widowed and without child anymore made such a huge difference in our world today. And so that's what I'm saying, is that if we stand with God as a church, if we stand with God as a group of people, He can do things through us. He's not looking for size. He's not looking for great speakers. He's not looking for all that. He's looking for the willing. And so that's the question, He's looking for the people who are willing to stand up for Him. And in a world today, there's not too many people like that anymore. So, we see that these two are willing to stand with God, and particularly Naomi. But then the third thing, I think, is Ruth chapter 4, verses 14 through 17. See, not only should we be willing to stand for God, but also be willing to stay with God's plans. That's hard to do sometimes. But look at Ruth chapter 4, verses 14 through 17. It says, Then the woman said to Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a close relative. And may His name be famous in Israel. Boy, was it ever, And may He be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you, who is better to you than 7 sons, has borne him. And then Naomi took the child and laid him on her bosom and became a nurse to him. Also the neighbor woman give him a name, saying, this is a son born to Naomi. And they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Because Naomi stuck to the plan, you see, God ushered in salvation to the world. Stick with the plan. Stick with God's purpose in your life. You may have been knocked down, you may have been had some drag-out fights, but stay with God's purpose in your life. You see, this baby that came, it changed everything. This baby named Obed changed the entire world because Naomi decided to stick with God's plan. You see, Naomi, at the beginning of the story, wanted to be known as this person called Mara, which means she wanted to be known as this person that was just bitter all the time. And she could have lived the rest of her days being bitter, and we would have never heard nothing else about her, right? She probably wouldn't even have made the book. Probably wouldn't even have been in the book of Ruth. It wouldn't have been. But she stuck with God's plan in her life, even though she'd been dealt raw deal after raw deal. Even though she'd been knocked down time after time again, she sticks with God's plan in her life. And this baby that comes, it changes everything. You see, Naomi went from being known at the beginning as a bitter little old lady to being known as grandma. And from what I hear, being known as grandma or grandpa is one of the greatest things on the face of the earth. Because I hear that you can play with those kids and give them back to their parents. No, seriously, what I hear is that being a grandparent is one of the most treasured things on the face of this earth. And they say it's something about it. I don't know. I can't wait till the day that I can find that out. I can wait. I mean, I'm only 36, okay? Can't be a grandpa. But here's the deal. I know and I've heard and I've seen some of you grandparents out there, the amount of joy that you get whenever you get to sit next to your grandchild, whenever your grandchild comes up to you, that I know that's one of the hardest things about living here, okay? I'm just going to be honest with you guys, is knowing that my kids don't get to experience that quite as often anymore. That's hard. That is difficult. Because I know what a grandma and grandchild relationship can be like, you know? And that's what Naomi turns into. She turns into from this bitter little old lady to this grandma. And here's the thing. She thought it was over. She thought it was over for her. She thought she didn't have a shot anymore. She didn't have any more of her family left, remember? But then Ruth comes in. And now she's grandma to this new little baby. Not to mention this baby that is going to usher in the line of King David. And yeah, I would say that he was called blessed among all Israel. You see, God's plan wound up going from Naomi being bitter and just having nothing to bringing joy. God's plan went to Naomi feeling like there was no more purpose left in her life, to Naomi fulfilling her purpose in her life that God has given her. See, no matter how many times you get knocked down, get back up. Get back up, because God's plan is still working in your life. You still got to seek it out. Don't give up on it. God's plan brought Naomi joy and fulfillment like she would never have known before, because she stuck with the plan. Romans 8:28 says, and we know all things work together for good to those who love God and to those who are called according to His purpose. So look, I don't know what God's plan is for your life, but man, keep searching for it. Keep seeking it. Keep trying to find it. Don't give up on it. And here's the thing. Let us help you as a church. Help me. Help us all together, come together and seek God's will, to seek God's plan and seek God's purpose. No matter what the history is, No matter what anything has happened in the past, quit getting stuck in the bitter past and look toward the glorious future that God's bringing us. Because one day, ultimately, look, His plan will be fulfilled. And I want to be a part of that plan, you know. I desire more than ever to be a part of that plan. You see, His plan in your life, it may not be obvious, but know this, He's got one. His plan in your life right now, you may not have any clue what it is. But I promise you this, He's got one for you. He's got one. His timing may not be perfect. I'm sure Naomi thought about that. You know, it's not a good time to take her husband. It's not a good time to take her kids. It's not a good time for her to move back. It's not a good time for anything for Naomi, you know. But that was God's timing. And His timing wound up being perfect. So His timing in your life, it's going to be perfect. It may not be your timing, but His timing is perfect. Your life, it may not be what you mapped it out to be. But with His map, it'll get you where you need to be. In your life, you may wind up not getting the glory. You may wind up not getting the glory, but know this. If you seek His will, and if you seek God with all your heart, He'll get the glory. And ultimately, that's all that matters. You see, don't let this world and all its trouble and tribulation and everything knock you off of your eternal purpose. Don't let that happen. It's so easy to let that happen. It would have been so easy for Naomi to just give up. They didn't knock her off her eternal purpose. It'd be so easy for some of you in here to just give up. But don't let it knock you off of your eternal purpose. God's got big plans for you. He's got greater plans for you. See, God's got big plans for this church. He's got big plans for all churches. And I truly believe in my heart that those who will seek Him, who will do everything they can to diligently follow Him, God fulfills those purposes. Without a doubt, God fulfills those purposes. And so know this, be like Naomi and seek God with your whole heart, no matter what circumstances life is thrown at you. Some of us need to do that. Some of us need to do that. Some of us have gotten in such a rut that we just given up. Don't give up. Keep going. For God's sake, keep going. He loves you. He's got a plan for you, and He wants you to fulfill your eternal purpose. The first part of that plan, though, is this. Is knowing Him as your personal Savior. And here's what that means. It doesn't mean that you know all the books of the Bible in order, forwards and backwards. It doesn't mean that you know all the hymns that we sing forwards or backwards. It doesn't mean that, it doesn't even mean that you're here at church every Sunday. You know what it means? It means that you have a relationship with Him. That's what it means. You see, that's where people get this backwards. People think that, man, I've got to learn all this, I've got to do all this, and I've got to get all this before I can get my life right with God. And that's not it. That's not it at all. It's not. You've got to get it to the point where you say, Jesus, you're my everything. You're all I got left. I'm depending on you. Depending on you to take it all. You see, that's ultimately the first purpose that He has for your life, is for you to draw close to Him in a relationship. Now, all of this stuff, the reading of the Bible, the coming to church, the knowing the hymns, that'll take care of itself. Okay? It'll take care of itself if you have a relationship with Him. But don't get the cart before the horse, If you don't have a relationship with Jesus Christ, I'm talking about a personal relationship. I'm not talking about one just by mouth. I'm talking about one where you can turn to Him as your best friend. If you don't have that, this morning I invite you to come and get that. Because here's the deal with that. It's free. You don't have to do anything for it. You don't have to work for it. It's free. God says, look, I desire that all men come to me. He hasn't picked and choose, He wants you. He wants you to come to Him. But that's the key. You got to do it. You got to do it. Ultimately, that's the first part of fulfilling your life's purpose, is coming to Him and getting to know Him. And it doesn't mean that when you do that things are going to be jolly and great. I don't mean that at all. I did that when I was 12. I got a daughter that's got a brain tumor, so it's not been jolly and great for me. But you know what? I've got a relationship with Jesus Christ, and that is jolly and great for me. No matter what circumstances this world brings me, they can't take that away from me. Well, nobody take that away from me. So I want to encourage you. Some of you have been out there just kind of seeking something to find comfort and hope in, trying to seek your purpose in your life. And what you're doing is you're seeking the purpose in your life without taking that first step, without having a personal relationship with Jesus. And you see, that's the first step. That's where it all starts. Once you do that, then it'll start becoming a little bit more clear to you. I'm not going to say you'll understand it all, because I don't. But you know what? There's something that I know, that I'm a child of God, and man, I'm willing to follow Him, willing to stand with Him. I'm willing to look like a fool for Him. I wore this jacket up here in this pulpit, right? I've gotten some compliments about this jacket. But you know what? I have a relationship with Jesus Christ, and that's the best thing about my life. Period. And it can be the best thing about your life if you just surrender it all to Him. Everything. So look, I want to encourage you, if you haven't done that, to do that this morning. Make that first step where you seek your eternal purpose. And if you've already done that and you've kind of been in a rut, you know what? I'll invite you to come up here and pray about it. Pray that you'll somehow get back on track with that. That somehow you'll get back to having a personal relationship with God. Because you know what? I know what that's like too. I was a Christian, I think I was 12, when I got saved. And there's been times where I've kind of like, man, I've forgotten about God and who He was. And I just kind of strayed away because I wanted to fulfill my own purposes in life. And I can tell you this, I've never been more miserable in those moments. And I've never been more happier whenever I know that I'm walking in the will of God. So maybe some of you are like that. And so this morning I want to invite you to just come. You don't have to come up here, you can come and do it at your seat. But here's the thing too I want to invite you to do, because I talked about this at the very beginning, is that we as a church family, we're here to help each other. We're here to lean on each other. This is part of it. Don't you for 1 minute think that somebody in here, is justified by laughing at you because of your sins. I'm not going to say that somebody in here won't laugh at you because of your sins, because look, it's a room full of people, and I can't control everybody, and there's different things and all that. But I want you to know something. If they're laughing at you, they're just as bad as you are. Because that's the point. We're all in here, and we're all on the same level. Every one of us. So I want you to remember that this morning. As Rusty and Alyssa come to bring a hymn of invitation, I'm going to ask you to stand, and I'm going to go to the Lord in prayer. And look, if you want to come up here, come up here. If you want to do it right there at your seat, do it right there at your seat. But I encourage you to find somebody to pray with. Father God, thank you for this morning. Thank you so much for your love. God, help us to remember that we all have an eternal purpose here. That you